Oh, we're checking everybody. Welcome to another edition of the Orange Bloods Modcast, brought to you by our partner, MyPerfectFranchise.net. Give Andy, reach out to Andy via MyPerfectFranchise.net, 404-973-9901. Contact Andy and let him help you start living the dream. Stop working for the man and build your own franchise. Andy will help you with that. Fellas, lots to get into today. Joined by Travis, Jason, and Alex. Anwar is on the 40 acres right now. Quite frankly, as we speak, Steve Sarkisian will be meeting with the media. So if there are updates from those proceedings, we will give them to you while we go live. There's a lot of talk about on the football side of things as we head to the first major scrimmage over the weekend, but the team is in pads. We'll be able to talk about Tuesday's first practice in pads. Obviously, practice in pads number 2 just finished up. There's only so much we'll be able to discuss. Alex, we'll also be talking a lot about recruiting. In fact, I will tell everybody, like the page, subscribe to the page, like this video in particular. By all means, jump in. And Brandon's already got me snorting over his hashtag tramp stamps and mullets, baby. For those that don't know, Brandon committed on Monday to getting a Pole Assassin's monkey tramp stamp if Texas beats Alabama in week 2. And it has kind of taken on a life of its own now that everybody knows that is a tramp stamp on the line. Alex, you look like you want to say something immediately.
Well, my question is, like, what is it? How does he define the pole? Like, will the monkey be on a pole, or will it be with the woman, or is it just a picture of the monkey by himself? Will there be any accompanying flair along with the monkey to kind of show that it's the monkey, the pole assassin?
Well, I think Brandon was wondering about this just a couple of days ago, and what I told him is I don't think he has to worry about it now, because I don't think it's something that ultimately he's going to have to worry about at all.
Well, we need to get it figured out, though, for sure, just in case it does happen.
No,
I think the monkey should be. I think the monkey should be on a stripper pole. I think
if it happens, I've suggested the week that follows, we just let everybody send in their suggestions of what the artwork for the tattoo, because it's not like it happens and he has to go get the tattoo immediately. By the way, we may have to do the Modcast live from the tattoo parlor if it were to come to that. But there's a lot of stuff to get to. Guys, if you missed any of the coverage yesterday of Cedric Baxter's commitment to the Longhorns, one of the top running backs in the country, Suchomel and I actually did a reaction video to that that's on the channel right now. You can check that out when this video is over. We've got the recruit cast. We've done a lot of different videos throughout the week. Want to make sure that you guys are aware of that. Let's just start with Cedric Baxter and recruiting for a moment before we go into the team coverage. Fellas, Jason and I spoke a lot about Baxter, so I will open the floor up to either Travis or Alex for any initial thoughts that either one of you might have had on really one of the most important and biggest commitments in this recruiting class. It accomplishes a lot of things, the least of which isn't mitigating the loss of Reuben Owens and whatever he ends up doing with his recruitment, whether it's Louisville or somebody else. They don't have to worry about that because they were able to fill the running back void in this class with a guy that's kind of equal to him in terms of upside, talent, all of those things.
Well, I mean, if you're just asking either of us, I think that, you kind of took the words out of my mouth. I mean, the first thing that comes to my head when I think about Cedric Baxter is, it helps kind of take some of the sting away, right, of the Reuben Owens stuff. You're talking about a guy that's a national prospect. The other thing is, I mean, he brings something a little bit different as far as his size and he's a tall, sort of lanky, long-legged, upright runner. It's a different type of runner than Texas really has. I know that Jaden Blue, he's a little. How tall is Jaden Blue? Is Jaden Blue about 6 feet tall? He's pretty tall.
I don't know what he's officially listed at, Alex, but I've stood beside him and talked to him a bunch. And
5'11".
Yeah, the hair is a little deceptive sometimes, but I would say 5'11" is probably.
Right. Well, I mean, I've always kind of thought of Jaden Blue as a guy who's a little bit taller, and he has a little bit of that same style. It's just, here's the thing, man. if you're going to be going after one of these running backs, and you're going after the big dogs, I think it goes to show a lot that Texas can hang their hat right now on what's happening with Bijan Robinson, how much national buzz he's getting. They're promising these guys they're going to be able to run behind a great offensive line. Jason can probably speak to more about how he was actually recruited. I know that Jason has known that this was going to happen for the last 2 months. So, I mean, it didn't feel like big news to me whenever this happened based on the conversations in our Slack channel. But, Jason, I'd be just curious, like, how much were they using the new offensive line to recruit him? Is there any Arch Manning stuff to recruit him? Is it the Bijan stuff to recruit him? I feel like whatever it is, I mean, all those things could be used. They all kind of coalesce and come together to where it creates a situation where even when you do lose a Ruben Owens, you can go after a high caliber talent like this.
Yeah, it's all the above. I'm sure Baxter doesn't talk a lot. I mean, last night, I don't know how many here watched his commitment announcement, but that was about as much talking as you're going to get out of him. And he's a pretty good interview. I said on our Slack channel, I'm like, damn, I wish this guy would talk more and do more interviews because he seems like a pretty good dude to interview. Yeah, I mean, Bijan's success, but I think more than that, Alex, and he said it last night, it's his relationship with Tashard Choice, Sark, and the Texas offense is appealing to him. So, but listen, I mean, when you can throw at him, hey, look at this 7-man offensive line class we signed last year and the guys we're going to sign this year, and Arch Manning's coming in. I mean, all of that stuff helps going to the SEC. I mean, it's a cumulative recruitment there, but ultimately, I think it was Tashard Choice probably. Choice recruited him back at Georgia Tech, continued to recruit him aggressively as soon as he got to Texas. So I think that and Sark's offense, those are the two things that he personally singled out yesterday in his commitment video.
Yeah, I was going to say, it is impressive that they went into Florida and took a kid who is desired by just about everybody. And this isn't let's face it, this isn't happening if Texas isn't going to the SEC. No matter what Tashard Choice's relationship is with him, no matter Bijan's awesome. Sark's offense clearly it knows how to use running backs. He's proven in Alabama. He's proven here. But if Texas isn't going to the SEC, they're not landing Baxter. And I think we've seen several kids in this class that's true of. No less than Arch Manning himself probably isn't coming to Austin if Texas isn't going to the SEC. So I think we saw a huge bump in recruiting for A&M once they made the jump, and we're seeing that now with Texas. And kids want to play with the best, and it's hard to blame them.
I think
it's throwing me off. I've never not seen Ketch in that top left corner.
Yeah, I was just saying too. It feels like Jason is Jason flipped to you guys?
It's like the Brady Bunch mixed the boys and the girls, and there was no rhyme or reason to the ordering of the Brady Bunch wall.
I feel like I just got bumped.
Mike Norris said everything Onmore just said there is so true.
You're now in the Bobby Brady spot, okay? And I'm back to where Greg needs. Oh, now he's got you over where Marsha would normally be.
Doesn't it feel like Jason's desk is typically on the other side of his body?
No, that hasn't changed. I don't know what the hell you're doing.
Is there something about your camera settings where it's not all mirrored or something like that? Or
turned it a little.
I don't know. Alex, maybe I'm going crazy. Me from the thing that I wanted to say, but thank you for getting me back on top. It's been so long. Jason and I were kind of talking about this last night. It's been such a foregone conclusion for basically the last 2 months. You really have to go back to the beginning because I can remember when I first posted, guys, I'm hearing Cedric Baxter's in the bag, and there weren't really any future casts that had been made at that point. It was still kind of a surprise, and that really was connected to Arch's decision in mid-June. It seemed like those things kind of went hand in hand, that Baxter knew Manning was going to be going to Texas. And then once that kind of happened, Baxter takes his visit to Texas. It really settles in on that's going to be his decision. And then he just wanted to wait until August 10th to make it. But there weren't any last minute visits to other schools. Even with Darian Gillette, as recently as the last week, there was we think he's going to Texas, but he's going to go visit the A&M pool party, and what might happen when he comes out of that. Baxter's just been chilling in Orlando, counting down the days, and it was a lot of them. I mean, we basically, it was 50-plus days from when Jason and I first put in our future cast for Baxter to Texas, and then he makes his decision. And we've all it speaks to the move to the SEC. I think it speaks to the Arch Manning stuff. I think you can't say enough about Tashard Choice, because when you look back at the totality of the recruitment, Choice connected with him when he was at Georgia Tech. I believe Baxter visited Georgia Tech unofficially last year when Choice was still the running backs coach there. So you can't stress enough that without that connection, this might not happen. There were a lot of factors that played into this, but Baxter at this point feels like as committed as any player in that Texas has committed. And typically these are the ones you worry about and you say, wait till we get to December. This is going to be one you have to watch till the very end. And Jason, that may be the case. Like maybe we'll say in a month or two, this kid sets up a visit to Alabama or something. I don't know. But as it currently stands, it's played out the opposite of, at least over the course of the last 2 months, of what a recruitment would look like if you and I felt like, man, you better keep an eye on that. Even though he's committed, you never know what might happen. The kid seems pretty damn locked in.
Yeah, all these comments about my camera being flipped are really throwing me off, man.
It's true. It's true.
I haven't changed anything. It looks fine on my screen.
I think it's just in your settings. You probably just chose not to mirror it or something like that.
No, dude, like I'm looking at my image and I know this.
Jason, don't get distracted.
I know
Don't get distracted.
He's already gone down the rabbit hole.
Ignore those bastards and just talk.
I think I tuned out half of what you said because this camera thing. But no.
I'm just saying, I think the kid's pretty locked into his decision.
Yeah, and I was being silly. Honestly, like I expected some of what you said, who maybe it happens where Miami makes a run or Alabama or somebody, gets him to potentially take a visit. I thought we might see some of that back and forth before he committed last night. I was looking, I had to go back and look at the timetable. He visited Texas. His official visit was the 10th. So he was that first weekend when they had their visitors in. And then Reuben Owens actually commits to Louisville on the 20th of June. I wrote my commitment story. I was wrong last night. I said the 27th. It was actually the 24th of June was when I wrote my commitment story. And I think it was even a couple days before that when we kind of knew he was coming to Texas, but I was working on some other stuff. So it took me a couple days to write it. So, we have known about this for, the better part of 2 months, but never once kind of, as we kind of tell the story now, we pretty much knew he was silently committed. Never once did he waver or have second thoughts or play games. I thought maybe Miami or Texas A&M might come in and try to, make it interesting and maybe give him second thoughts on that silent commitment, but never once happened. He feels to me like he's pretty locked in. Everything he said at his press conference yesterday feels like he's 100% locked in with his decision. I will say this. I'll go back to the one thing, college coach told me once, you always have to recruit out-of-state players even after they commit. You have to recruit them as if they're uncommitted. So Texas will have to be aggressive and continue to stay on top of that one, but he's given no indication to think he's going to look elsewhere. And listen, Tashard Choice is a recruiting madman. That guy's got energy just coming out all over the place. So I don't think it'll be a problem with Tashard Choice staying on top of Cedric Baxter and keeping him in the fold.
Alex, before we move on, I just wanted to go back to the difficulty of comparing him to guys. I heard some interesting comparison. Deshaun Foster's name was mentioned at one point yesterday, and I thought, well, that's not terrible. And then, there's
TJ Yeldon.
TJ Yeldon was another that I saw.
Was that one that you saw?
Yeah, someone did.
That's the first thing I thought.
Name.
That's what I thought. He looks a lot like Yeldon.
I went with Eric Hardiman, but I mainly was trying to think of a Texas guy that Texas has signed over the course of the last 2 decades that fits the profile to some degree, and there really haven't been any. When he arrives, he'll be a little bit of a different type of running back that we've seen.
Jason, you're back. You're back. I'm sorry, Ketch. I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Okay.
But
I can breathe easy now. Okay.
Okay. No, it is, man. It's a different style of runner, but these tall guys, we've seen them come into the NFL. We've seen these guys come into the NFL and be fine with this kind of body style. I think it's fine. You don't worry about it whenever you watch this. I mean, what you worry about with these guys who have a little bit more of an upright running style. What was it, Pierre Strong this year? We'll see him tonight in the game versus the preseason game versus the Giants. He'll probably get some run for the Patriots. You see him with the upright running style, and whenever I was evaluating him, I said, you don't really worry so much about it because it's not like he doesn't present a whole ton of surface area whenever he runs. Just because you have that elongated trunk and stuff like that, it doesn't mean that you need to present it to the defense every time that you run. And I don't see Baxter as a guy who runs like that at all. He's a guy he's a guy. I wouldn't say that he can get small through the hole, but he can definitely shed through the hole. He doesn't present a whole ton of surface area. So I think having maybe you could think of Chris Warren as a similar type because he was so tall too. But Warren, of course, was just so broad shoulders, so jacked. He did present that just massive amount of surface area to opposing defenders that you don't really see presented in the same way with Cedric Baxter.
Guys, let's transition. We can come back to recruiting in the hour. By the way, everybody like the video, subscribe to the channel, get notifications, tell your friends and your mom and your dad about the channel. We do appreciate you guys being in the chat and participating as always. I do want to jump to football. It is kind of why we're here. It's a big deal. The Longhorns officially in week 2, and the pads have come on. Alex, I'll come to you first. We all have the quarterback. So we had our quarterback report from Tuesday's practice on Tuesday's evening. I don't feel like you yelled fire in a crowded theater in that report, but it was important to communicate and convey that is a position that the coaches are still waiting to see that group take off, get a little better, start performing at a high level, however you want to state it. And it's not a one-time deal. I mean, Travis and Jason can attest to this. We've been in our Slack channel talking about some of the things that have been said about that position so far during the first week of practice. Not a lot of it positive. It felt like it kind of came to a head on Tuesday where we got reports that Sark was really unhappy about the practice, that I believe it was a source that you spoke with that mentioned, hey, the offensive line certainly wasn't doing their part. But yeah, at the same time, they got to start getting more from the most important position on the field. With a little bit of time to marinate on everything that's happened in the first week of practice, I'm going to ask everybody the same question, but I'll start with Alex. Where's your head with the quarterbacks? Where's your head with Quinn Ewers? As we get ready to head to the first main huge scrimmage that I think will help define the depth chart and a lot of what this team does in week 1 against Louisiana Monroe coming up in just a few days.
I think the exact term that was used was at some point somebody's got to start separating. And I just wonder, it's like, I believe last year, Ketchum, you might be able to remember better than I did, but it felt like a starter was announced last year right after the second scrimmage. And he planned on having a starter named this year before last year. That's what he said at Big 12 Media Day, Sarkisian. So if this thing goes out past next weekend's scrimmage, Saturday's scrimmage, not the first one, but next Saturday's scrimmage, then all of a sudden we'll know that Sark has found himself in a position that he was not at all thinking that he was going to be in at this point, which to me, if you're a fan, if you're the type who likes to worry, there are different types. Some fans like to worry. I've noticed, like it's inexplicable to me, but some people like to worry about all this stuff. If you're one of those, I guess you could worry about it. But look, I think that what happened on Tuesday, from everything that I've learned, it feels like it was just a big confluence of factors. First of all, they had been having a lot of their practices earlier in the morning. For the first day of pads to start practice at 3 p.m. on such a hot day. I know also, here's the other thing, is the wind had started to kind of die down a little bit. We had that southern wind coming in for the first part of practices for in the late afternoons that gave the guys a little bit of relief. It wasn't windy that day. It was still and just hot, and it was 3 to 5 p.m. and it must have been hotter down there at Denius. You have the defense who's getting to go for the first time with pads on versus the offensive line. The offensive line, we had heard they've been holding up fine. When this defense was able to pin their ears back and go, especially when you had guys like Byron Murphy getting a chance to run with the ones and stuff like that. This is they weren't going to have a good time with that, and the offensive line folded. Andre Carrick reportedly had a rough day. Christian Jones reportedly had a rough day. Jake Majors reportedly had a rough day. So you have your two tackles and then the center, right, the cog in the middle, having rough days. I mean, these quarterbacks they're not going to be able to get anything done. And it's like Jason said in the Modcast last week, if you watch these guys throw versus air like we had done for the previous 2 practices before that Modcast, before the Texas Media Department went Texas Media Department on us and shut practice down on us 15 minutes before it was going to start. And so we missed that 3rd practice. But at those first 2, Jason said, dude, if this was a pro day and you saw these 2 guys out here throwing against air with these wide receivers, you'd be like, hey, well, I mean, that could be a first-round pick. That's literally how they look, right? But we saw last year with Hudson Card, you just think back to the Arkansas game, and you get a little pressure, things can break down really quick. And so I think that's what makes this scrimmage so important. This offensive line is not good as far as the starters. Andre Carrick doesn't look like he's improved much. Christian Jones doesn't feel like he's improved that much, even though he's had some credibility built up as a senior. Jake Majors has been a starter for now 1 full season and 3 games of his freshman season. It doesn't look like he's improving in the strength category the way that you would like. So they have to get something figured out with the offensive line. Some of these freshmen are going to have to play, because the fact of the matter is these freshmen, their group of guys that's completely freshmen, right tackle Cam Williams, right guard DJ Campbell, center either Logan Parr or Cole Hudson, left guard either Cole Hudson or Malik Agbo, and then left tackle Kelvin Banks. That is a better group overall. And the reason they're a better group is because what we're told is that they go versus the ones and the twos in practice too. And they don't give up the pressure that the ones do. So at some point, I know it's scary, but at some point you're just going to say, look, the better guys got to play. Kelvin Banks has got to play, right? Kelvin Banks has got to play. DJ Campbell has got to play. Some of these guys are just going to have to play. Okay, and Junior Angelau might have to move down to center. If he moves down to center, what happens at guard? That's probably a DJ Campbell elevation. If you have to bench Andre Carrick, that's going to be certainly a Kelvin Banks elevation. There are going to be things like that come into play. But I think that what Sark is going to be looking for is, once they do get that offensive line right, and even between now and the time that they do get that offensive line right, because make no mistake, the offensive line is not right now. But as they go towards making that offensive line right, they're going to find along the way which one of these guys can operate better under pressure, which one of these guys is going to be most composed, and which one of these guys, most importantly, is not going to make turnovers. Because last year we saw that was the most important thing with Sark, is when the lights came on, the pads started popping with real scrimmage bullets flying. It was the turnovers that were the thing that he leaned to the most in picking his starter. And I think it's going to be just the same this year. I didn't expect that we're going to be talking about this like this coming into the first scrimmage.
Hey, do you think, guys, that there's any I just really hadn't thought about this until Alex was talking. They've got the scrimmage Saturday, of course. Open practice, they just announced for Tuesday for fans, media, everybody. The full practice will be open. Would it behoove Sark to have a quarterback announced before that Tuesday practice so that he's not having to just juggle, we got to make sure we get even reps because everybody's going to be watching and counting every snap? I mean, is that possible? I mean, it doesn't sound like there's been much separation, but is it possible Saturday scrimmage is so important that he basically says, okay, I'm going to name my starter on Sunday or Monday going into next week, and then we'll divvy up the reps in a traditional 1 and 2 role in that open practice and obviously beyond that. So I don't know. It seems kind of sudden based on the fact that neither guy appears to have really taken the bull by the horns, pardon the pun, but I would think if Sark had his druthers that he would probably like to have a starter name come out of this weekend, or is that too soon?
Well,
if
last year, quick, Travis.
Yeah.
Last year, it was right after. It was literally the practice after the first scrimmage.
Was after the first? It was after the first. I couldn't remember. It was right after the first or right after the second. So I know it was right after one of those.
Was when Sark made the move to start giving Hudson Card all of the reps. And you'll remember one of the things that happened in that first week after the first scrimmage was that Casey Thompson wasn't even taking all of the twos. In the next couple of practices, they were giving Charles Wright some run with the twos. And very clear, although not announced, decision. It felt like we started counting the days of, okay, Hudson Card's 2, 3, 4 days in a row where he's been taking exclusively most of the work with the ones. It'll be interesting, Jason, if we see that. I have a hard – yes, I think it would behoove him. And Travis, I want to get your thoughts on this in just a second. I think it would behoove him to make the announcement. I just don't think – and maybe it happens starting today. Alex, I think there's a practice tomorrow, if I'm not mistaken, although it's a lead up to a scrimmage. So maybe that's
tomorrow is just going to be a walkthrough.
You would think.
Yeah.
You would think.
No, it's like they'd be ridiculous. They'd be cockamamie to do anything besides a walkthrough on the day before a scrimmage, right? Especially after you've had 2 full pads practices. I think that I would imagine that tomorrow will be short. They might not even wear shoulder pads tomorrow. It could just be shirts and helmets.
Yeah, I think they've got to mix in a couple of more practices before camp is over where they're not. Did we lose Alex for a second?
No, I think we lost you. I feel like I feel like my connection's robust.
Yeah, Ketch, he froze up. Yeah, I'm looking back. Last year, they didn't name Card the starter until
it was game week of week 1.
Yeah, I'm seeing stories like the 28th, 29th, and 30th of August, depending on who's reporting it.
But Ketch is right that the practice reports started coming out that
we knew it.
Card started getting more reps with the ones. He didn't name him the starter until week 1.
Yeah.
And to your question, Jason, if he comes out and names a starter Sunday, and that dude goes out on Tuesday in front of the horde of fans who show up and just craps the bed, that could be worse than if he just rotates both guys in on Tuesday. You know what I'm saying? Like if there's a concern at all that whoever he names goes out and cannot perform in front of all the fans on Tuesday, why would you set yourself up to do that? And based off week 1 practice, I mean, the first day in pads, that's a possibility, right?
Yeah,
it is.
And also, Travis, I mean, let's say he names one the starter, and then that second scrimmage, the other guy plays much better. Then Sark's like, oh, damn, he's second guessing himself. And well, I can't very well switch back the other guy because then people are it's going to look like
right.
shit.
Then he's got to wait for another Arkansas to happen.
Yeah.
It's funny, guys. The elephant in the room on this is that our sources behind the scenes are very specifically telling us that Quinn Ewers has to make a greater commitment to mastering the playbook, knowing the ins and outs of the offense in a way that doesn't exist right now. It's, I think, very damning probably for Hudson Card that there's a very clear storyline right now that extends to Quinn Ewers and what they want to see, that Hudson hasn't been able to take advantage of this and put some points on the scoreboard and saying, because we know that's not what they're saying. They're not saying Hudson Card doesn't know what he's doing. It's almost scary that he knows what he's doing, and there's a bit of an internal perception that Quinn still has some work to get there, and Hudson hasn't been able to take advantage of that, Travis.
Yeah, I've been thinking about that a lot since that news came out. And you're 100% right. If Hudson can't separate with Quinn not knowing the playbook, then Hudson's in real trouble. Because
but hold on, wait. Why is Hudson not in real trouble if he can't even beat out this kid that doesn't even know the playbook? It's
that's what I'm
saying. Hudson is in trouble if he can't beat out a kid who doesn't know the playbook.
Okay,
because Quinn will get it with repetitions. I mean, and who knows? Maybe his next NIL deal will come with a requirement that he spends 4 hours off week, studying the playbook. But Quinn will get it when he gets repetitions, and the physical tools. The thing I keep going back to is Sark has talked about accuracy is one of the big things he looks for. Accuracy. And every time I read the practice reports from Anwar and, from you guys on the board, it's always talking about Quinn really looks accurate with just a flick of the wrist. He gets the ball down. So whether he knows the playbook or not, if he can get the ball to the open guy, that's a huge win. Now, obviously he struggled, and he is a freshman, and we've got to expect him to struggle, especially if the offensive line isn't right. But yeah, you mentioned in our private Slack conversation, Ketch, that I've kind of been staking myself on this Quinn Ewers train, and that's because
what other choice do you have?
Yeah, I mean, we've seen Hudson, and Hudson can improve. He's just a sophomore. He doesn't have much experience either. He absolutely can improve, but I feel like Hudson's problems are much less correctable than Quinn's problems. I look at Hudson's delivery, and it feels like it takes 10 seconds for him to get the ball out going anywhere. That just destroys routes. That destroys receiving options. That's a mechanical issue that has to be fixed. Quinn just needs to learn it, and he can get that a lot easier than it takes to fix Hudson's mechanics.
I got to play devil's advocate on the Quinn stuff. Like, I don't know. I mean, listen, he's only been there a spring. He's still new. Yeah, he's probably still learning some things, but I remember when he was a recruit, talking to people close to him and other sources, one of the things that people talked about most with him, he would sit there and do, like, with Lincoln Riley and Tom Herman and probably Sark, even, like, whiteboard talk. And I mean, just break down plays. And it was like the coach was like, holy shit, this kid is incredible. Like, already being able to break down offenses or break down defenses and kind of pick up our offensive schemes and things. So, if he's not picking things up as quickly as everybody maybe anticipated, I don't know, man, that just kind of goes against everything I've ever heard about Quinn Ewers. But that just really isn't a big concern for me. I think, like Travis said, give him a few more reps and he'll pick things up just fine.
Marion says in the chat, let me bring this back up. I'm the only one saying this. No, I'm not, Marion. I'm just the only person in the media who's had the guts to say what's being said behind the scenes. If I'm being completely honest,
I think his name's Marlon.
All week long, is that Marlon? Okay,
yeah. You can continue calling him Marion. I mean, he's the one talking smack in the chat.
No,
I think it's great calling him Marion.
Like, when it goes up on the screen, the letters get smaller.
Yeah, man.
So then I find myself like Garrett Gilbert squinting at the screen, trying to figure out if that's an L or an I.
He's squinting.
Yeah, I know. I'm pulling a Garrett Gilbert. You have to understand, in the all week long, we've been communicating with sources behind the scenes, and this is a shared. It's not like even one or two people. This is, I'm telling you, this is the thing being talked about behind the scenes in the program, to the extent that even people who I would say are in the Quinn Ewers camp, they've heard it, they know that there's a need for the mental side of the game to improve. And on some level, no shit that a true freshman is still trying to pick up the mental side of the football game. I mean, one of the things that we've talked about this week is the expectations that come with the quarterback position. He can't just know what he needs to do. He needs to know what every person on the offense is supposed to do in every situation based on everything the defense either shows or doesn't show or might show. It's a complicated position that he plays, and I think that some of that responsibility is probably new to him, and I think that it's correctable. It's like, hey, he needs to learn the offense better. The good news is that's almost certainly going to happen. I mean, repetition. It's only the first week of practice. Yet, either we're going to talk about the things that are happening and we're not going to be mouthpieces of the university and just tell you everything's okay. Sark said on Monday, hey, the quarterbacks are all competing at a really high level. Except on Tuesday, he went home all mad and pissed off because the quarterbacks weren't competing at a high level. So either we can have a transparent conversation and be adults and talk about this topic that we're all obsessed about, Texas football. Either we can have a real conversation or we can just feed you a bunch of bullshit and pretend that what's happening isn't happening. So yes, maybe I'm the only one saying this.
And then we'll get yelled at later because they'll say you didn't set us up for the expectations. You set our expectations too high. It's like,
why won't you guys tell us what's really going on?
Yeah.
The truth of the matter is there are certain conversations that you'll get from us. We will be transparent. We're not yelling fire in a crowded theater, but we are letting you know that someone's playing with matches in the corner. And how everybody responds to that is we can't control that. But this is a real thing. And it's a thing that going into the season, everybody, I think, needs to prepare themselves for. We always talk about how many yards do you think Quinn Ewers might throw? How many touchdown passes do you think he might throw? How many critical mistakes he might make isn't often one of the conversation pieces that we have, but he's a young quarterback. I can remember Colt McCoy in his second season turning the ball over 20-plus times in 2007 after he'd only turned it over 5 times as a redshirt freshman. It is a gradual maturation process, and I think that's the number one thing that everybody has to take to the bank on this. There's this desire that it happens so quickly that you can feel good about talking about the college football playoff in 2022 as if that could be a real thing. And the reality is this was a 5-7 team a year ago. It has what is almost certainly going to be a starting quarterback without any experience. There's a process that has to take place while that guy grows up in real time, and you can't cheat that. And it's as simple as that. What we're talking about is a reality-based conversation that isn't reason to panic, but it might be reason to pause on your placing bets on Ewers winning the Heisman this season. That's
Too late. I've already done it.
I know. I'm looking at you, Mr. Prop Bet.
Now, you know what, Ketch? What strikes me is as you're talking, I'm wondering. I've been sitting here wondering if this information isn't getting pushed out as a way to nudge Quinn along, whether he knows the playbook enough or not, whether he needs to develop even more in that film study and that work, and this is just a way to kind of goose him, to get him going a little bit more. Because I keep wondering, anytime someone leaks information, the question always is, who benefits by leaking it? Why are they telling you this? And that's why the person who benefits the most is probably Quinn. And so that's why I'm not sure why the information is coming out. But if that's the end result, then that's a good thing for Texas if it does get him, light a fire under him to progress a little more. Because
it comes out because we're some charming bastards.
Well, clearly, with suave hair, too.
I mean, never underestimate the drunk uncle's ability to, get somebody to open up.
But they still have to have a reason for saying it. Drunk uncle's suaveness or not, there's still some reason why they want to say it. And I'm really thinking it might be to goose Quinn a little bit here, to get him just to that next level of preparation, because that's a learning process, too. You're 100% right that he's a freshman. He's going to make mistakes. But part of that maturation process is learning how to study, learning what it takes to become a starter, learning what it takes to not just know his role, but everybody else's, and know everybody else's and how it relates to whatever the defense is doing on week 1, week 2, Lord knows, especially week 2. There's a process here, and I'm wondering if this isn't just to light a fire under him and get him going a little more.
It's needed. So if that is the intent, you hope that it works. I mean, it'll be interesting if we can get to – I always remember the conversation, Jason, around Vince. it was different, right? I mean, there were times it was more about Vince's ability to function inside of an offense as a passer, right? I mean, you and I would go to practices early in his career, and he was either throwing the ball over onto I-35 or like skipping the ball 5 yards in front of a receiver. And it was like, well, he didn't do this in high school. Why is it happening when he's in college? This isn't the way it's supposed to go. It's just a reminder. It's a different game, played at different speed with different types of athletes. It is, it's like going from no Spanish at all to Spanish 3. This is high level stuff. It's just a reminder that everybody's process is different. Quinn's will be different, and his ability to soak it all up and make those adjustments will define a lot of this season, but how well he adapts and how successful he is individually this year.
Yeah, and I always say, like with Vince, and you don't know this until you throw him out there, though. Sometimes guys are just gamers, man. I mean, the bigger the stage, the better they're going to play. And Vince was not a great practice player, especially early in his career. We would watch. This is back, Catch, when you and I could go to every single minute of every single practice, right?
And we did.
Yes.
That was a shot to the heart of Alex right there.
Yeah, Alex. Yeah, you missed the good old days. But we would come out there like, oh my gosh, what is up with this number one recruit kid? And then they put him in a game, and like literally first play, you're like, okay, you see the it factor come out, and I think, I don't know. We'll see. Quinn hasn't thrown a college pass yet, but I do think Quinn has some of that it factor. You saw it in high school. I mean, that was a very good South Lake Carroll team and a sophisticated offense they ran at South Lake. But, I mean, I've seen all the comments popping up, and I agree with everybody else. Like, hey, man, he's gonna take his lumps a little bit. I mean, he's never played a game, but I think he'll grow through those lumps pretty quickly, and he'll come out on the other side just fine. So I'm not hitting the panic button by any means just yet.
Alex, on a 1 to 10 scale of just being alarmed specifically for the 2022 season, where are you at on the 1 to 10 meter?
Alarmed? So what does 10 mean? And like, God, I'm more alarmed than I could ever.
10 means you're jumping off like the 360 bridge.
Okay.
1 means you're just going to watch Breaking Bad and smoke some weed.
No, I'm going to do that anyway. But no, man, as far as can I say it like this? So I was on a podcast like last night, right? Somebody had me on their podcast last night, and they just, it was a fantasy podcast. We were talking about my cheat sheets and stuff for Roster Watch, but he knew that he knew I did this too, and he's a guy that does Debbie League Dynasty stuff where they draft college players, and so he knew I did. So he's like, "Well, I got you here. I got to ask you about Texas." He's like, "So is Texas back?" And I was like, how can I tell you Texas is back when I don't even know who their quarterback is going to be this year? I mean, it's like, I don't have a foundation to even start. I can tell you about a lot of stuff. I can tell you about a lot of the amenities, the features, the blinds, I can tell you it's got this awesome sink with this, $600 faucet. And, you walk in here, there's a great view of the lake, like all this stuff like that. But I can't even tell you what the foundation is. I don't know if it's a concrete slab or if it's pier and beam. Like I literally don't know, So to me, I wouldn't say that I'm alarmed about the season. I would say just right now,
the quarterback position with the current state of things. I don't mean 30,000 feet up the entire team and program.
Okay, so it's just the quarterback.
Yeah.
I mean, 5 maybe. And the only reason I say I'd just be right in the middle is just because I don't feel any major sense of alarm. I don't feel any major sense of, wow, they got that in the bag. It feels like it's somewhere in the middle. Maybe even a little bit, maybe like a 5.5, only because it feels like with every day that goes by that a starter's not named, that's another day that Quinn Ewers didn't go get the job, right? Because if this were a situation where Sark was waiting for Hudson Card to go ahead and win the job, that would feel like something that was kind of antithetical to what our working premise has sort of been this whole time, right? And so if that's the case, we've been thinking about this thing backwards the whole time. And the idea that maybe Quinn is still picking some things up. The idea that Hudson Card that we get consistently, even if they're not telling us that Quinn's having trouble picking it up, what we're hearing consistently is like, look, Hudson, Hudson's looking good. He's hanging in there because he knows this system. He's been in the offense. He's done all. What that tells me is that there's some catch up to do in that department for Quinn Ewers, and it feels like every day that passes is another day where Quinn Ewers has not really caught up. And so I would say as it gets closer and closer to game day and stuff, the longer this thing takes. If it's going to be Quinn, Texas fans, I would think, would like to hear it sooner than later because that meant that he's not taking quite this long to kind of just get up to speed with a guy like Hudson.
I saw Quentin in the chat predict that. I mean, man, that second part, Baylor 17 sacks to 38 sacks. I don't know that I would expect Texas to make quite that jump and in the sack department. Just my instincts. But hey, Quentin, maybe you have a better finger on the pulse of this.
This dude Blake Bryant saying it's amazing how many armchair analysts and coaches we have here. Well, hey, listen, dude. I mean, we're not forcing you. We're not holding a gun to your head asking you to be here. Like get the hell out if you don't want to. You're literally tuning in to hear people analyze the Longhorns. Or people who got
he was talking about the chat, Alex.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry.
Maybe I don't know. You might be exactly right. But yeah, would remind that the whole point of the podcast is literally to do this. Guys, I'm looking at the clock, and if we're not careful, we'll do one of those things where we wanted to go for an hour, and Jason's going to have to tell us he has to hang up on the call because he's got things to do. Let's shift away from the quarterback position. Let's shift away from offensive line, even though we haven't completely talked about that a ton in this Modcast. And a big point of tension because we did talk about it earlier. Alex mentioning he thinks that second group is at least performing as well as the first group. If we take those two things away, the thing that I want to go around the room, the thing that stands out to you about the first week of practice, not including quarterbacks and offensive line, Alex, I'll start with you. Is there a thing that sticks out with everybody else on the team, not including those two things?
I'm just trying to. I can't believe I'm going to say this, dude. But because this is a player that I was not big on, I thought was a bad offer. I wasn't expecting to be. I wasn't expecting to really think much of this guy, but it's Tariq Milton, the second team slot wide receiver. To me, like every practice I've been to, he is performed in a way like to where he's just shown so much more than what I thought he was going to bring. I thought he was going to be, you line him up at the Z, you let him run, he's a track guy, you let him run. He's a lid lifter that's going to open things up for other guys if he gets on the field was my impression of him coming in, and I can admit it looks like I'm probably wrong, and I can admit it. It's fine. I'm going to be wrong about some things. He's lining up in the slot. He's running like option routes. He's giving these guys a lot of trouble. Whenever he gets a two-way go, he's a lot more nuanced of a route runner than I thought. That slot man behind Jordan Whittington, I think it's becoming really interesting with a guy like Tariq Milton, and also what you have in Brennan Thompson, who's kind of lining up behind him too, and also Savion Red. So I mean, so that's an interesting group of slot wide receivers, and I think that was probably the thing to me. It's kind of one of the least expected things that I've been able to sort of take away.
Jason, what about you?
I mean, I hate to do it, but I'm kind of piggybacking off of Alex. We only got to watch 2 practices. We're hearing reports of other stuff, but didn't get to see a lot from the defense. But I remember when we were walking out, Alex, the first practice was like, Milton, they've inserted him right behind Whittington, which I wasn't necessarily expecting. So, I think he's got a chance to be a contributor and gives you some peace of mind if you're a Texas fan. Hopefully Whittington can stay healthy, of course. But if for some reason he can't again, then I think you've got a pretty good player there. I mean, you say aside from the O-line and the quarterbacks, those are kind of the 99% of my focus has been
I just didn't want to ignore everybody else and everything else.
Yeah, I mean, I'm trying to think like D-line. Okay, Byron Murphy's making plays. Yeah, okay, pretty much expected that. The Alfred Collins kind of inconsistent. We've heard like, hey, he's been great, but he's got to be more consistent. I thought Sark's kind of breakdown of the individual players along the defensive line was pretty interesting. Not a lot of surprises. We haven't heard a ton about the kicking game, so I'm kind of curious to, maybe check around, or certainly next Tuesday see what is Will Stone the guy there? Is Bert Auburn? Is he the walk-on? Is he going to be the guy? So, Alex mentioned Savion Red. Hell, he was back there returning punts the first couple of days of practice. I never would have thought we'd have seen that. So, and I'm sure he'll be down the depth chart a little bit in that department. But yeah, I mean, for me, man, I mean, I know you said other than quarterback and O-line, but that's where 99% of my focus is, to be honest with you.
Travis, same question.
Yeah, I damn sure wanted to talk O-line too, but you know what? I will say the most interesting thing to me is the Diamante Tucker Dorsey chatter, that he seems to be picking it up and doing well, because we've talked on this Modcast before about, he's got the limited physical tools, but clearly the dude knows how to play football. And if he's able to come in and really genuinely contribute and shore up the middle linebacker, the middle of that field, then that does allow Demo to shift to more of an edge rusher. And anything this team can do to pick up more sacks is all right by me and definitely needed. So that to me was the most interesting thing I've heard out of the practice chatter, is Diamante Tucker Dorsey coming along well.
Jason, I think you touched on it. For me, it was Sark talking about the defensive line. It was the way that happened was Anwar specifically asked Sark about kind of the comments that his defensive coordinator made a week ago when he said, "What pass rush?" and then went out and listed a bunch of things that they had to do to get better. And then at the end of it said, "Man, it sure would be nice to just have better players." And then to hear Sark list Keandre Coburn first and kind of rattle off, a few names of guys more inside than outside. I think even if he was lying to me, I would have loved to have heard a huge Ovi Ogofu endorsement. We think he's a guy coming off the edge that's going to improve us over Ray Thornton.
The endorsement was the Big 12 media days. I think he feels like he doesn't need to endorse that guy anymore. It's like, fair. I feel like that's what that was. But yeah,
Alex, I still feel like the answer that he gave us, you go back and read through that again, and you take everything that you know and apply it to those comments, it's a little alarming. And I think it states pretty obviously that's still an area that's a major work in progress. And where the production comes from, I think is still kind of a mystery. I think to Travis's point, if Tucker Dorsey's able to contribute at a high enough level that they can leave him at linebacker and move Overshown around without feeling like they're making a huge concession at linebacker, I'm curious to see what that looks like, because at least that's something different, Alex, than what we're kind of programming our brains to think it's going to look like. I'm trying to figure out in my head what I think the upside of Overshown being used off the edge in pass rushing situations without linebacker responsibilities. And it seems like maybe something that's better than some of the other options that are in my head.
Well, that would just have to be a sub package thing, because you have to remember, Catch, you guys have seen it at practice where they're running now. Sometimes they'll have 3 interior defensive linemen. They'll have 2, they'll have the buck end, they'll have the jack end, then they'll have the 2 inside linebackers, then they'll have the nickel off the field. And so in a situation like that, I don't think that there's any way that you're going to be able to move either Demo or a hypothetical DTD to either side of the overhang, right? So if they're in a regular base where it's just a nickel, because the nickel is the base, right? Yeah, I mean you could see Overshown shifting over where it looks like he's going to carry the number 1 or number 2, then do something where maybe that jack end slants out, some sort of stunt there off the edge. Like that's like people are talking in the chat. It's like, I can't picture Overshown. Well, picture it on a stunt. right? Picture it on a stunt wherever Ovi Igwofu is lined up at a 4 technique. He goes outside. The tackle's got to come outside of him like this. Overshown comes through the middle and up in a B gap like that. Just picture that, and you can picture it very, very, very easily. As far as him coming off the edge in a traditional way, I'm just not sure how they would align him. But I do feel like it opens him up to maybe try some things, and especially with Gary Patterson in the picture now, the king of these twists. I like that makes plenty of sense to me. I just don't know how it could be a permanent feature of the defense or a thing that he could permanently do as far as his alignment.
I love Barry Sorrell jumping in and throwing in a little endorsement for the
there
other
you go, man.
Sorrell, number 88 on that defense. He's going
to
be a critical guy with this group.
And I'll tell you what, Mr. Sorrell, he's a good looking player. He's a good looking player. So
he's developing physically like a guy that has a chance to be a real impactful player, whether it's this season or a little down the road. I'm buying stock in Baron Sorrell where it's available. Fellas, let's go into parting shots. I'm looking at the clock. We could do this for another hour, but we can't do this for another hour. Jason, I'll let you start off, lead us off in parting shots.
I'm taking a page out of Alex's book. I don't know why I've been paying more and more attention to this, but why is it that schools, I've only looked at like Oklahoma and even Alabama, their media gets access to every single practice. They're able to shoot videos and stuff like literally right from the sidelines. I mean, looks like they're 5 feet away from the players. We get 2 practices, 20 minutes of shit access, and we're in the end zone up a hill, probably 30 yards from the back of the end zone. Why it's not hurting Alabama. A&M gets all kinds of coverage. I just don't understand it, man. And it's been every single coach that's come through Texas. So that tells me it's probably not the coaches. We know, who's pulling the strings there, but it just gets more and more frustrating the more I see all these other schools with much better access. They're not watching the entire practice. I'm not saying that, but is it going to kill them if we go out there for 20 minutes a day to watch practice? I just don't get it. There's no logic. There's no rhyme or reason. I'd love to hear the explanation, but I just don't understand it. Transitioning from that, big commitment for Texas yesterday. We're looking for Monday. Jordan Matthews, Baton Rouge Woodlawn defensive back, is going to announce out of Texas, Michigan, and Tennessee. We've talked about it at length. I still feel really good about Texas's chances in that one. So Texas's recruiting momentum, I think, is going to continue on Monday.
I'll say this. Can I just jump in, Catch? We got this guy SG in the chat saying, Jason, do you hear the tiny violin in the background? I'll tell this dude SG, like, do you hear me having to go make phone calls and find babysitters and stuff to drop my kids off with, and doing this an hour before practice, driving in from goddamn Spicewood, Texas, going there, spending basically the whole day getting ready, dropping kids off, going into practice, all of this stuff. It's been planned for a week. You get there and you check your emails, and in your emails where you don't even get alert for anything, 15 minutes before this thing is set to start, you get an email saying practice has been canceled, no other word. Like, what do you do then when you spend your whole day? Because at that point, it is no longer about business, really. It's no longer about this being my professional career. At this point, it becomes personal. Gas costs me $120 to fill up every single time I'm driving from goddamn Spicewood. All right, it's my kids. It's $60 to have them taken care of by babysitters. It's an hour of my goddamn time driving all across the fucking creation because John Bianco has no sense and no respect for the media. And it doesn't just hurt us. It's not just personal for us, but professionally it sucks. It isn't any good for Texas. Look at Bama. Look what Pete Carroll did at USC. Look at all this stuff and tell me how the media not getting any access had anything to do with Texas being a horrible 5-7 football program last year. Like,
NFL teams get more access than we get. We
get absolutely, like, look, and all we're trying to do is provide the best coverage for you guys. That's it. And so, like, honestly, it makes my job easier to not be there. It makes my job easier. But I want to be there. I want to give the best coverage. I want to understand as best I can. This is my job. I take pride in it. And I'm saying, if you're going to give us crap access, that's fine. We've come to understand that from them. This is aside from Texas. This is aside from Texas football. This is about one man, John Bianco, who sucks. Okay? And so listen. If you're going to give us crap access, give us crap access. But dude, don't tell us 15 minutes before practice is going to start that we no longer have access to practice.
Exactly. And that's not the first time that's happened. I mean, we've all got lives. We've got, make arrangements with kids or whatever, and, juggling our schedules. It's not like they said 2 hours before practice, hey guys, practice is canceled. I mean, literally people are standing outside of practice waiting for the media opportunity to open. They send an email. Nope. Practice is, even though we told you it was open, sorry guys, it's closed. So that part's frustrating too, but just the lack of access in general. I wish I could get an honest answer. I don't know. And just say, why is it? What are y'all protecting so much that nobody else seems to give a shit about? Why is it so strict at Texas? What are you benefiting by it? I don't know.
Eric, contact Chris Del Conte. He's the only guy that I think would actually care.
Del Conte will listen. He'll
about
listen.
A negative email. He doesn't like them.
Let me tell you his email address. Actually, I'll find it. Let's just see if we can find it. I'm not gonna put out.
He also responds on Twitter.
I'm not gonna put out his cell phone number here on the thing, but let's just see. Chris Del Conte. You guys can go on with. I can tell you whenever I pull it up. It's just right here on the staff directory for Texas. I'm sure.
I would just say this. The only thing I'll say about practice access, this idea that there's some sort of competitive disadvantage to opening up practice is so ridiculous, because every NFL team opens up training camp for weeks. It's like a circus. There's anybody and everybody can come and watch every single piece of practice. And if NFL teams really thought that the secret sauce was being given away during training camp, they wouldn't do that. They would be like, well, it's too important not to give away what we're doing. But the NFL views training camp as a way to connect with their fan bases
and make money.
But just because when the season starts, you don't get really close access. So the thing about training camps is that you can potentially, a mom and dad who can't afford to take their kids to games, right? Because the base ticket's like $75, $85, and then you got to park, and it turns into a $200, $300, $400 weekend just to take a family of four to a football game. But they can go to a practice, and they can sit on the grass, and their kids can roll down the hill on the practice fields while dad watches a little football. It's a way to give back to your fan. It's such a small, considerate thing, and that it turns them off so much to be remotely considerate when there are so many examples across the country of programs who haven't sucked for a decade, who are so much more giving to their constituents, to their fans. They're not trying to cause little local scuffles with the media, the tension that exists around this program and has existed for more than a decade. It doesn't have to be this way. And I'll
tell you, as you're talking, I'm looking, guess who allows media access? I'm not saying we're going to watch 2.5 hour practice, but guess who allows media some access to every practice that I've been looking? Ohio State, Alabama, Georgia, Oklahoma, Texas A&M. We get shit, So
Jason, the two best teams in the history of this program, with all due respect to the 2018, the 2004 and 2005 Longhorns are the best teams I have ever seen in the history of this program. And those two teams allowed wide open, unfiltered access from beginning to end. Every single rep, all 24 periods of every single practice were wide open for everybody to come see. It didn't keep Texas from going to Ohio State and winning in Columbus. It didn't keep Texas from beating Oklahoma in 2005. Those open practices didn't keep Texas from dominating Texas A&M from 1996 through 2009, where A&M scratches out a victory. A&M didn't beat Texas during the glory years until Texas closed down the practices in 2006 and 2007. Some might say it was karma. That it wasn't losses to the Aggies didn't occur until after they closed off this theoretical access that the Aggies would have had to all this secret football intel. Give me a break. Just be good people. Just be good media.
Them sticking us in the end zone was a COVID thing. Well, listen, that's really not an issue anymore. I mean, it's stupid to begin with. We're outside. If anything, you're cramming everybody closer together, making all the media members stay in the end zone. I mean, there's just no right. Nothing about it makes sense. But anyways, that was.
You know what? And I want to respond real quick to Quentin Ray's chat comment saying, Alex, you chose this job. Let me just say, this isn't the media complaining about media access. The people that are hurt by these decisions is not us. It's the fan.
We're
the
kind of
fans
hurt.
are the one not. The fans are the one who are missing out on good on availability. The fans are the one who are missing out on solid information. The fans are the ones, the fans who pay the salaries by buying tickets and buying jerseys and everything else that pumps money into the athletic departments are the ones who are shortchanged by not providing access. So this isn't about the media. This is about the media fighting for access for the fans.
The little guy, no less.
Yeah. And so I just put it in chat, but I'll tell you guys, they were asking for Del Conte's email. Dude, email Del Conte if you feel like you just want to tell him that these guys are doing a bad job, which they are. It's ad@athletics.utexas.edu. So it's easy. AD like athletic director at athletics.utexas.edu. Chris Del Conte's super cool about responding. If you feel like people should have more access and this should be more opened up, or they should at least be a little bit more, just a little bit less disrespectful, you can let Chris Del Conte know.
My only other parting shot, Travis, what was yours? I'm sorry, it turned into a bitch session.
Okay. I was going to talk about the Big Ten and ESPN and all that. None of that matters. Go on.
Fair enough, because you're right. In the context of all of our conversation, that would stick out a little bit like a sore thumb. Look, I just wanted to say there was a question earlier. Someone made the suggestion that, I don't know, I've got a bad attitude and that somehow I'm yelling fire in a crowded theater and that I'm telling everybody the team is going to suck. I think I haven't budged off of what I think this team is going to do. I think we're talking about like an 8-4 football team. And I think there's a real conversation to be had about whether or not, from an expectation standpoint, the right over and under is 7.5 or if it's 8.5. I think Vegas has it at 8.5, but history has showed us over the last decade that tends to get inflated a little bit. I think it might be 7.5, but my answer is still the same. If it's 7.5, I'm going over. If it's 8.5, I'm going under. Nothing that's happened in the first week of practice has changed my thought process from 30,000 feet of what I think this team's probably going to accomplish this season. But we're having an honest conversation about where things stand in early August. And that is going to look different than probably what the conversation looks like in early September. It's different than what the conversation will look like in early October. And certainly by the time we get to November, in theory, like, boy, we're hoping things will have gone really bad if in November things don't look kind of radically different. The idea is that this team will grow up on the job, on the fly this season. We're just in the early stages of it. And we're talking about how the sausage gets made. And quite frankly, if you get turned off by hearing how the sausage is made with the football team in August, maybe you should just show up in September when the games start. Like, maybe it's not healthy for you if it's uncomfortable to hear kind of the ins and outs of some of the growth that takes place during camp. But no, this team's not going to fall on its face, I don't think. This team's not going to have a losing season, I don't think. This team's just growing up in front of our very eyes, and part of the growing up process includes climbing over some uncomfortable hurdles at times. Trust me, I played on a lot of bad football teams. Alex wouldn't know anything about this because all he ever did was play on Westlake teams. They just beat everybody. Yeah. But, like, I know what it's like to be on a bad team and to try to get better and to try to improve from that. It doesn't happen overnight. And I think that that's the thing that you should take away from this conversation, the general conversation about Texas football right now in early August. This is a construction project that's in its infancy stages. Be okay with that. Like you're going to have to be, because it is. And either we just don't do any shows at all and don't, or we talk about like what's actually happening as it happens. We choose the latter. And I'm not telling you to leave our channel and to never come back. I'm just saying, I don't know quite what some people, maybe you just want the Kool-Aid poured. You want that Kool-Aid poured so bad. You want us to tell you that 10-2 is the floor and that there's no way they're not making the Big 12 championship game. You want us to do that. But then you also want to kill us if for any reason whatsoever we come close to saying that and then it doesn't happen. So we're damned if we do and we're damned if we don't. And in a scenario where we can't win, we're just going to tell you the truth of what we're hearing and try to have a conversation about it. And sometimes it's fun and sometimes it's not as fun. And, but at the end of the day, it's always fun. We're talking football. This shouldn't be the most stressful thing in your life. And if it is, I'm not telling you to cancel your Orange Blood subscription. You should absolutely keep that. I'm just saying maybe consider your approach to every piece of football conversation that takes place. Because as a Dallas Cowboys fan, I pay attention to training camp. And like, if I live and die by them trying to find a freaking kicker because they can't find one that can make, like, I'm just going to like want to shoot myself. So what do I tell myself? They haven't even played a preseason game yet. Of course it's, I know they're not going to win the Super Bowl, but of course it's all a work in progress. By the way, Jason, real quick, last thing. Who's more screwed this season, Cowboys or Steelers?
Steelers.
Yeah. Although they've been saying Mitch Trubisky looks good, whatever the hell that means.
We could be doing Steeler videos right now, trying to convince people that Mitch Trubisky's looking great in practice. Forgive us.
Brutal division, brutal schedule. I mean, 6 wins maybe pushing it for my Steelers. But
this is the path that we chose.
Yeah.
Look, we'll be back next week. For myself, Travis, Alex, and Jason. Like the video. Don't make me have Alex scream at you again. He'll do it. I will sick my junkyard dog on you guys if you don't like the video. Please subscribe to the channel. Thanks for hanging out with us for an hour plus. We always enjoy it on Thursdays. For all of us, thank you. You guys be good to each other. We'll talk to you.